it was unimaginable back in 2006, right? We only had 5 teams for high school and 5 teams for college, so 2 divisions all in all. And you know, fast forward 12 seasons, and here we are with 15 divisions for cheer, and it has spawned a dance competition with 2 divisions, hip-hop and jazz, and then we just introduced drumline. So for me, it's really grown by leaps and bounds. The creativity, the routines that they make, all of the skills that they do, it really shows the dedication and the passion that they have. To see that there is a road to the Olympics now is such a dream come true. It's like our wildest dreams coming to fruition. To be able to continue supporting Philippine cheerleading so that we can progress even more, go beyond the world, possibly get a gold in the world, and then on to the Olympics.
Making noise for what NCC now. We gonna show you what we're made of. Making noise for what NCC now. We gonna show you what we're made of. Making noise for what NCC now. We gonna show you what we're made of. Making noise for what NCC.
Hello, everybody. It's Friday once again here on the the NCC, well, your one and only National Cheerleading Championship PEPTALK live stream. We are simulcast in YouTube also, NCC Philippines, and we're live on Facebook. So join us, join our conversation. My name is Carlos Valdez, and here are my co-hosts.
All right, happy Friday! I made it just in time. Woo! So, sorry, baka makita niyo lang bigla akong pinagpapawisan kasi tumakbo ako paakyat. Good evening, everybody. Happy Friday. I think ramdam niyo naman din yung pagod natin sa mga kinayod natin this week. And of course, hello, I'm Coach Anya, your resident host and NCC coach. And of course, we have...
At syempre pa, ako ay nandito na naman. Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. Cheerleaders, cheer dancers, cheer enthusiasts, coaches, alumni, parents, lahat. And of course, cheerleaders, magandang gabi. I am Coach Lee J, the Changed Man, year 2021. Happy Friday. Advance Valentine's to everyone.
Yes. Advance Happy Chinese New Year.
Oo. Gong si,
Right.
ano ba yun?
Gong si
cha?
Fat Choy.
That's right.
Gong si Facha, yan. Dalawa nga
That's
pala yung
right.
kasama kong ano rito. May lahing Chinese.
Yeah.
Right.
Oo.
But we also want to say hello to our international audience. Alam mo naman,
Of course.
NCC has been. We have international guests, and tonight is no different. Tonight's very special guest natin tonight,
Siyempre.
and we were.
Tonight is another EOE, ha? EOE.
What's EOE?
English only episode.
English only episode. You can do it, DJ. You can do it,
Yeah.
and I think
I
our
know.
audience.
Pray for me. Pray for Lee.
Pray for DJ.
So,
That's
ang
good. That's good.
hashtag po natin for the show this evening ay prayers for Liege.
Diba? Medyo.
You're self-deprecating. Kayang-kaya mo yan. So,
Nag-warm up
Diba?
tayo ngayon eh. Medyo.
did you warm up? Did you read a dictionary today? Or, yeah.
Tsaka
Okay,
yung
good.
mga antonyms, synonyms,
Right.
parabola,
Right.
hyperbole, mga ganyan. Mga
Yeah,
konti
we have a very special guest tonight, and I would encourage sana naman our community gets to join us here because they can ask so many questions, and this
That's
is probably the first they will be talking about the first ever cheer fitness app that I know. It's a fitness app, it's a community app, it's it's all in one.
Yeah.
Actually, sige, go ahead, Anya.
No, I'm just, kasi when we found out, I guess siguro for our viewers, when we found out that we were going to have our guests this Friday, super na-excite ako because I've had this idea of doing the same thing. It's just that it's so hard to be able to come up yung mga ganong types of exercises that you can share with people outside of cheerleading because syempre hindi naman ako doctor or like anything in that professional level to be able to create those types of exercises. And I'm so happy that there's somebody who finally came up with an app, and I think this is a great parang gateway into the world of cheerleading so that people I think people outside of the cheerleading world, yung mga into fitness lang talaga would also benefit from it.
Right.
Kasi di ba, exercise pa rin naman siya, so at least ngayon ma-appreciate nila how hard we work.
Yeah, no,
For ourselves.
and not just that. Of course, we have our guests, no, but one of our guests is a doctor and a physiologist. Of course, he will be here and he will talk about the actual science behind certain exercises, how your body reacts to certain things. He's of course, I won't preempt anything. It'll be fun to talk about it, but it's exciting because there are sports doctors for all other sports, and cheerleading, right? It's just as specialized as all of these other sports, and he's here with us tonight. So it's our privilege to have all of these guys, both our guests here tonight to talk about this. So, but before that, some news. I think we said this last week also, that the FIBA Asian Games basketball will not be pushing through this month because of all the COVID restrictions. I think we were supposed to host a leg of the Asian circuit, but it won't. But I think the team will be flying off. Still depends because everybody's still trying to deal with the bubble issues and all of these things. So sorry to say, our college sports are still up in the air, and we don't know. Our university and high school programs are still up in the air, so we just have to try and make the best of it. Although there are some as usual, but it's getting, we just have to hang in there, guys.
Kapit lang.
Uh,
Kapit lang.
Kapit lang. Kapit
Yeah.
lang.
Yeah.
We gotta stick together and find alternatives, right?
Yeah, and I think this episode is the answer to that.
Right, correct. So, but
Yes.
before that, both of you have recommends tonight. Let's start with Anya. You have a recommend.
Yes. So mine is a little bit of a teaser lang because tomorrow pa kasi siya i-reveal. And syempre, I mean, if you're just new to the show, I am part of Bello Medical Group. So yan ang aking day job. And syempre, when I get the chance to promote our wonderful, wonderful skincare products, my passion in life. Syempre, i-shoot ko na yan dito sa PEPTALK, diba? Let's share the gift of skincare. So, if you check our Instagram account, that's at Bello Beauty, we've posted a bunch of teasers in terms of what we're going to reveal tomorrow. But since I'm here, and of course, ang NCC community ay very special in my heart, so just between all of us, so this is actually what I would definitely recommend if you want skincare that works, that doesn't hurt the budget. So I know a lot of people, or if you're quite familiar with the Bello, it's medyo pricey. So it's quite intimidating, but as a skincare person myself, I've tried a lot of skincare products already, and there are some na it's cheap but it works. Meron ding it's cheap but it doesn't work. Merong mahal na it doesn't work. Merong mahal na it works. But in terms of finding like a middle ground for it, I think we finally found the answer for that. So, yon, I'm so excited to share that with you guys. So please follow at Bello Beauty on Instagram. And then, yeah, you'll find out tomorrow. And fun fact.
Bitin. Wala bang...
Bitin. Mga ano ba rin siya? Products. I think I've shown one product from that brand. So, in a previous episodes back. So, yon. Just abang-abang na lang tayo sa Instagram tomorrow. Yon. And then, fun fact, ako yung nag-style and my husband took the photos. So, pag kailangan nyo rin ng photographer.
Nice,
So, pag kailangan nyo rin ng product shoot, tumatanggap ako ng racket.
Talk about pivoting, di ba? In the times of COVID, di ba?
Oh.
Right. So, photographer, stylist, dapat model rin. You should be the model of Bello Beauty.
May isang post doon. If you follow Bello Beauty, you'll find me. Secret na lang kung alin.
Okay, good. So, abangan yan, tomorrow. Lee J, go.
Oo. Okay, sige. Eto, mabilis lang, no? Actually, as you all know, marami akong collection ng mga sapatos. And syempre, napurnada tayo na itong ECQ and pandemic na hindi tayo masyado sapatos. But then again, it so happened, meron tayong nakuhang bagong sapatos. And this is quite special. Limited edition siya, no? Kung tutuusin.
Oh my gosh.
Kasi, sobrang limited niya, no? Yung best friend ko, at saka ako lang ang meron nito, si Mayor Isko Moreno, no?
Wow!
Kami dala. De, joke lang. Pero papakita ko sa inyo, actually this is the Adidas Ultra Boost 20, no? DNA series ang sinasabi niya, DNA series. Bakit DNA? Because they have special limited shoes for each city, no? Selected cities. So kung makikita niyo, what I'm holding right now is the Adidas DNA Manila. Okay? Specifically for the Philippines.
Manila City or Manila, Philippines. Yeah.
Manila, Philippines. So kung makikita ninyo, kasi meron silang Manila, meron silang Saigon, meron Kuala Lumpur, may Sydney, may Tokyo. Okay? So this one, Philippine colors, blue and red, do sa watawat natin, of course. And then syempre yung white, no? And kung makikita natin dito sa Maydila, no? Sa Maydila, as you can see, Manila. Diba? Manila. 'Di ba? Tapos, ang kagandahan nito, habang naglalakad ka at tinitingnan ng sapatos mo, sa likod nila, sa likod niyan, makikita nila na merong mabuhay.
Bamboo.
Oh, that's so nice!
So,
Ang
yeah.
ganda!
Eto talaga, no? Just to tell you frankly, I've been wanting this pair last year pa. Okay? Bakit? Kasi nga, 'di ba dapat mag-worlds tayo. I really wanted to wear this during the worlds. Kasi meron na akong Adidas na jacket na Pilipinas which will really pair with this one, no? So
Right.
maganda.
That's nice.
This pair, well ngayon, no, may mga resellers, no? May mga resellers and they are quite selling it at high as 20K, no? Pero ang retail niyan is at 9.8. SRP is 9.8, no?
20,000 pesos is about what? $400?
Yeah, $400, no? 400 US, no? But luckily rin, I was able to find one pair with my size and at a very reasonable off the bat
price.
Anong reasonable yan?
What's reasonable for you?
Parang half the price, di ba? Half the price.
Oh.
Diba?
Not bad.
Legit. Kumbaga nag-legit check pa ako. May resibo, may box ng Adidas and everything. No?
Good.
So, good job. All right?
Ganda!
Does your girlfriend know that you have this, you like spending money on your shoes?
Marami kaming mga kinahihiligan din, no, ng mga bagay-bagay sa buhay namin. So, what's mine is mine. What's hers is hers. So, hi, you're watching again. Thank you.
Hello!
I think she wants a bag now. She wants a bag.
Nako, Coach, bukas, abangan mo. There's something for her there sa pag-reveal namin.
Actually, sabi nga niya sa akin that she really wanted to see the product line of Bello. But yun nga, hopefully, tingnan natin. Sige.
Good luck with that. Okay.
Yep.
Hey, without further ado, let's say hi to some people here. Ian Pate, good evening. Hi.
Hello. Happy Friday.
Ate Nay Moms, watching with you.
Thank you. Thank you for watching.
Summer, sorry. Shout out Phoenix of Tacloban. Okay.
Hello.
Tacloban Leyte. Hello, good evening.
Of course, Mark
syempre,
Prado.
Our ate.
Hindi mawawala.
Tapos si Coach Ramon. Hi, Coach.
Hi, Coach.
Coach
We miss
Ramon
you.
was one of the coaches of Team Pilipinas, the national team, and multi-titled coach yan.
Yes.
Okay. So
like
before
and subscribe sa YouTube niya.
before we continue, let's get the show on the road. Play a short video, and then we bring in our guests. All right.
Hi, I'm Brianne Hanson. I am co-founder and CEO of Cheerdistrict. My passion for cheerleading started when I was 6 years old, and it's been growing ever since. When I was a kid, I used to always beg my mom to stay late at cheerleading competitions so that I could watch the open level 6 athletes, because the skills that they put on the floor were incredible, and I knew that I always wanted to be one of those athletes. Fast forward 15 years, and I was finishing up university. I was the head captain of my cheerleading team, and I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with my life, but I was really hoping that somehow cheerleading would stay a part of it.
Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Christie. I am the co-founder and president of CheerDistrict. I've been involved in the healthcare industry and fitness industry for over 20 years. I currently own 2 practices which incorporate many different healthcare practitioners. My background wasn't always as a chiropractor. I was a sports scientist for, I think, going on almost 20 years. One of the things that I was looking at doing was developing strength and conditioning for cheerleading. we kind of sat down and hammered out a plan as to how we were going to make the strength and conditioning program work for cheerleading. And at that point, we came up with the idea of developing Cheer District. Brianne went out and started to look at different ways that we could get this to the cheerleading world.
I'm passionate about Cheer District for so many different reasons. I really want to share with athletes why it's so important to train their bodies outside of practice. I know from personal experience that if you don't, the effects are everlasting. I truly believe that if I had had these tools, I would have been able to drastically increase my skill set because I would have been way less prone to injury.
So I've been involved in many different sports, and one of the things you'll notice with these sports, they actually do conditioning outside of their practice. In cheerleading, there's not as much time to do the conditioning. They're not going to do a lot of the conditioning at practice because when you're at practice, you should be doing practice. So in that aspect, I try to put together something for them that they can actually do at home. There are better ways to train, but having the appropriate programs is going to help reduce the injuries. And if you have less injury, you can practice more. And when you practice more, you have better performance.
We don't, in cheerleading, have to have the physiological background that some other sports or trainers have to have. By giving this tool to them, they now have that in their back pocket. They don't necessarily have to have that expertise, but they're able to share that with their athletes so that they can get longevity out of their athletes, less injured athletes, hopefully, if their athletes are using this properly, and then hopefully they can create better teams. In my last year all-star cheerleading, I had to sit out a bunch because I had such bad back pain. I was going to chiropractic and physio like 3-4 times a week, and now I'm in my 20s and I'm still uncomfortable all the time. I can't sit at my desk, I can't ride airplanes, I can't sit in the car for a really long time without feeling that pain, and I feel like that wouldn't have happened if I had had these tools in order to take care of myself when I was an athlete, so that now post-athlete, I wouldn't be in this position. I want athletes to know the benefit of working out for their sport and making it a part of their weekly routine. The workouts curated by Dr. Scott are unmatched, and if you take ownership of yourself, understand the intensity of the sport, you really can excel in all areas. The community platform we have created includes cheerleading-specific training, coaching tools, never-before-seen analytics, and social networking. By bringing this all together, it gives us all the tools to grow our industry and to grow as individuals in the sport. Head to the App Store and download the Cheer District app to discover it for yourself.
All right, so I think it speaks for itself. And without further ado, let's bring in these. I consider them very. They're going to be cheer celebrities if they're not already. World because of this. So let me introduce first, ladies first, of course. Brianne Hanson, all the way from Toronto. Hi.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Honored to be here.
Nice. Okay, nice to see you, Brianne. Nice to finally see you face to face. Right?
Yes.
And then, of course, her partner and co-founder of Cheer District, Dr. Scott Christie.
Hello, Dr. Scott.
Hi, Dr. Scott. Good evening from the Philippines.
Yes, good morning.
Yeah, so I guess it's really early in the morning there, but let's get right through it. Let's get right to it. The first of all, we're honored to have you here, both of you, and I'd like to see where. Of course, we had that little video, and which they can find on YouTube and the other apps, but. Take us through your rationale why you started Cheer District and why you thought it was needed at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll jump in, and then Scott, feel free to interrupt me. Also, sorry I'm a little dark, guys. The sun hasn't come up yet, so I'm sure in a couple minutes when it comes up, it'll be a little bit lighter. I am in front of a window. So we started Cheer District really out of the passion of the sport. I actually got to know Scott really well because he was my healthcare practitioner. So I started when I was 6 years old all the way through university, and starting at a pretty young age. In Canada, cheerleading was still very, very new. So we didn't necessarily have the same equipment that we do now, or the same knowledge and expertise that we can now access from everywhere. All of the different coaches conferences and all those things where our coaches can go and learn. We didn't have that when I was growing up as much, and we definitely didn't have appropriate conditioning outside of practice in our opinion, we still don't necessarily have that, which is why we started Cheer District. But I got to know Scott super well because of all of the injuries that I had. And, we were always on the same page of, we thought that the cheerleaders needed something better. They needed something. So basically they didn't turn out like me. Scott always joked that, my body was a mess because of all of the things that I did and didn't take care of it properly. And we actually started, yeah, right? It's every time I talk to a retired cheerleader or like an older cheerleader, they're like, my back, my knees, my neck, my shoulders. And I'm like, I am there. I'm with you. I'm like, I'm mid-20s. I shouldn't be like crippled over with back pain in the middle of the day. It's pretty crazy, but we both had that passion. And it actually wasn't until I was finished school and I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was still getting treated by Scott because I was still broken, of course. And I whined so much about the job that I had and I didn't like it. He was like, Brianne, just come work for me. And I was like, okay, sign me up. And he has a clinic in the old cheerleading gym that I grew up at. So it was a no-brainer for me to go and help him run his clinic. So while I was doing that, that's kind of when we started talking about what can we do to take that step to really help the cheerleaders and help the next generation of cheerleaders so that they don't turn out like me, so that they can really strengthen their bodies and prepare their bodies for skill before skill. So with Scott's expertise, we were able to put together some significantly lengthy programs. All of our programs are season long. So an athlete can theoretically start with us at age 8, which is when all of our workouts start. And they can train with us up till 18 plus, and they'll get a new program every year. They'll get age and level specific workouts, all that kind of stuff. But it was a journey. It still is a journey. We started just over 3 years ago, if I'm doing that math correct. Honestly, time has flown by so quickly, but we're still growing and adding, and Scott works for, a couple hours a week on the programs to keep building them and keep making them longer and better and faster and stronger. So that's kind of where it came from. We're both super passionate about cheer. We've both been in it for a really long time. Scott's been in it for over 30 years. You're welcome, Scott. And we're super passionate about the sport. I don't know if you want to add anything, Scott.
No, I think that pretty much covers our lead into where we are today.
Yeah, and actually, as a former cheerleader and a digital girl, I'm very, very excited when I learned about we were having you guys on the show, because honestly, this is something like what you said, Brianne. It was something that we didn't have access to back when we were still active in our cheerleading days for Coach Lee J and I. So, we really just had to resort to what our seniors knew, what our coaches knew, even the techniques, it was pretty old at that time. So what was, and this is for Dr. Scott. So how did you start with coming up with all of the programs that are in the app? Because I understand that, of course, for you to be able to create these programs, you have to be like, you have to have some sort of like accreditation or something, So it doesn't have to be like, just put something out there, just do 30 jumping jacks and you'll be fine, something like that.
Yeah. So as Brianne alluded to, a long time ago, I had my own fitness facility and I was coaching cheerleading. And with that, the cheerleaders would have to come and work out at the gym. So they had to work out 3 times a week. I would design all their programs. And over the years, I got to know some of the top exercise physiologists, not just in Canada, but in the world. So I have 2 people that I kind of spent, I still to this day, I spend a lot of time being brought up to speed with everything so that I can share it in the cheerleading world or apply it to the cheerleading world. Because as you guys discussed, there isn't any research, or there isn't a lot of research, and there isn't a lot of thought put behind the workout. So I became a sports scientist, and I worked with a lot of the best athletes in Canada, which turned out to be some of the best athletes in the world. So I worked with the national rowing team. I even worked with a lot of professional sports like the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is a hockey team, their farm system. And then every sport that you can possibly think of on an individual basis, trying to train these athletes for their sports to go to university on scholarships or to make bigger teams. My job was to research that whole sport and then develop a program based on where that athlete was and where they need to be. And then throw in the mix, the injury risk of that sport, trying to mitigate these athletes from being injured. So that's kind of my career path.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. Like I never saw it that way. But like now that you've explained it, like it makes so much sense because some of the things that I've been wondering, I guess like after I've graduated from cheerleading, is that it's funny how cheerleaders have like specific like body build, like versus football players versus basketball players, because their needs are entirely different and their roles in the sport that they play are entirely different. And now that you've explained it that way, it puts everything into perspective. So that's pretty cool. But now we went through the app, and of course we've already signed up, and I hope there's something in it for 30 somethings like us.
Well, actually, Anya, I'm browsing right now with the app. So I bumped into Brianne's profile. So she was sharing like, of course, exercises, and at the same time, like what to eat for competitions and practices. So could you imagine that there are also those kinds of meals that we have to prepare for competitions? Not only that, of course, us, Anya, way back when during our cheerleading days, is that if there's competition, we can eat what we want to eat. During practices, we can eat what we want to eat. So right now, there's like, as you can see right here, I don't know if everyone can see it. Okay.
Yeah.
That, so you really have to know the proper way also of eating so that your body would be able to perform at the optimum. Correct me if I'm not, Dr. Scott and Brianne. So I think
No, you're absolutely right.
the science and at the same time the logic of going in prepared is really different right now. I mean, there's a lot of injuries, there's a lot of complications that we have to consider before entering not only just to cheerleading but also to different sports, right? So yeah,
Absolutely.
could you talk more about it? Like, for example, how did you come up with these kinds of ideas that you have to put into?
So something that we focus on, and this is from our personal experience in the sport, and obviously Dr. Scott's experience working with so many other elite athletes, it's that to be a well-rounded athlete and to be, an athlete in life, not just when you're in the cheerleading gym. There's so many other aspects of it and so many things that contribute to what makes us a well-rounded athlete. So that's something that we really focus on. You'll notice when you scroll kind of on the timeline of the app, which by the way, you guys should let us know, and we'll unlock your training so that you guys can try it out and
Yay!
take a look.
I'm so excited.
So we focus on a lot of those other areas as well. We use the timeline for education. Obviously, we always are going to have the fun stuff, the interviews with athletes, the whose uniform is releasing, that kind of stuff. But our primary focus is really education, and we try to use that feed as education so that the athletes can have a way of just. We mindlessly scroll through Instagram and Twitter and Facebook every single day, but what if we were mindlessly scrolling and learning at the same time, right? Like that's what we're trying to get across. So we work with different people in the industry and different people who are, knowledgeable in that field. So for example, the nutritionist that we work with, although obviously Dr. Scott has a ton of that background, we work with a registered dietitian who was the former director of nutrition at UCLA Athletics. She actually used to be a cheerleader too, but she writes a nutrition post for us every single month so that we can contribute that education. We work with Jeff Benson, who is a mental training coach. He's a child psychologist. So he works and does stuff on mental blocks and mental training and those kinds of things. We've worked with a sleep specialist, and she's done posts for us. So we just try to work with as many different people in our industry who specialize in all of those things that make us well-rounded athletes. Because if we're not sleeping, we're not training properly, we're not getting the most out of it, our muscles aren't firing the proper way, if we're not fueling our bodies with the appropriate nutrition, then, McDonald's before practice is never a good idea. But I feel like so many kids do it. We want to teach them, maybe mix in like a sweet potato, something like that. It's never been about, for us, it's never about the way an athlete looks. It's never about anything like that. It's simply about how can you fuel your body to perform at its best, and to reduce your risk of injury is really all that it is. And those two kind of go hand in hand. I don't know, Scott, if you want to weigh in on that as well.
Yeah, no, I think we're trying to cover what we think would improve an athlete's performance, and obviously strength and conditioning is one of them. But the other two big ones in all the other sports industries, the other two big ones are going to be nutrition and sleep. And there's a lot of research being pumped out on sleep right now that if you have less than 7 hours of sleep, it actually interferes with your performance. And like I said, some of my mentors, I've been privy to like really recent research to show why some of the Olympic athletes didn't perform well, even though they did all their training appropriately. They started to realize that there was an interference in their performance due to their lack of sleep. So they corrected that for the next year.
Yeah. So so here in the Philippines, I don't think a lot of teams, have that kind of access to like the holistic approach when it comes to the sport. So I think more of the focus is really in the skill building, conditioning, strengthening, but not really in the nutrition and in the sleep side. There are a few that are fortunate enough to have their own team nutritionist, they have their own doctors, etc. But can you tell us how your app can help teams like here in the Philippines that do not have access to this type of holistic information, and how it could help their coaches and the cheerleaders?
Go ahead, Brianne.
Oh, we're too polite. I think that it's a really great platform because a lot of the time, like you might have heard in the video that was played at the beginning, is that a lot of the time the coaches don't have that physiological background. They have the experience in cheer. They have the experience of what does it take to build a certain skill? What does it take to do a certain stunt? All of those things, they have that knowledge. Just like you and I do. Scott has a different knowledge set that he can bring to the table to really help us prepare that other side of the coin. So what we see a lot is a lot of the injuries in cheerleading are happening because we're trying to build our strength while building the skill. And instead of preparing our bodies for skill and then doing the skill, which actually makes the skill so much easier to learn, you can learn the skill faster. But because the coaches don't and we don't, like, that's not their fault, but they don't have the physiological background in order to prepare the body properly. We think about strictly, okay, what are the things that we do specifically in this skill, as opposed to looking at it from a holistic perspective of, okay, I need to have strong arms to be able to do a back handspring because I have to be able to support my body weight. But what are all of the different aspects of doing a back handspring, and how should I prepare my body to do that? And how can I prepare my body to limit injuries while I'm doing that? And that's what Scott takes all that information in his brain and puts it into the workouts in our app when he builds those workouts. Because what's unique about our platform is that not only do we have that physiological background, but between Scott and my experience, we also have the cheerleading background. So we can kind of marry those two, and Scott takes that and then creates workouts. So if I'm 10 years old in level 3, I'm getting workouts that are appropriate for not only my age and like where my body development is at, but also for my level, the skills that I do in that level, the most common injuries that we see in that level. Right. And Scott takes all that information and creates the workouts based on that, so that the athletes are preparing their bodies for the skill, so that we can see that skill acquisition happen faster and more safely.
Very, very well planned.
Yeah.
Step by step.
It's almost
or manual.
Yeah, it's almost common sense, right? When you hear it from somebody, you hear it from a Dr. Scott.
Why didn't we think of that before?
And Brianne, it makes sense. But like I guess here, like what Anya mentioned, I wanted to jump in and ask a question. While I go out sometimes from the show and look for videos, so I dig for all of these
He's
things.
our producer, director, everything else.
So but I guess this is a question for both of you. Uh, how do you definitely the way I look at a cheer athlete, it's distinct from another sport. It's very distinct, right? So the physiological demands on that athlete are also very different. Um, so how do you? And I guess this is more of Dr. Scott also. How did you? I don't want to say 30 years in the biz, right? But
Oh, say it all you
say
want.
it, say it. But because there's credibility there. But how did you develop and develop? How did you start looking at the athlete specifically for cheer with your experience with all of these other sports, and how did you develop a program? And how different is the program from these other sports, from these other athletes, and how specific should it be?
Yeah, so I think your audio is breaking up a little bit, but I think just to summarize, you want to know why did we pick, or what's the methodology of the exercises that I've chosen or the programs. I guess that's kind of what you're going after.
Right.
So cheerleading is, you got a 2.5 minute routine and you have to do a bunch of different activities. So to me, look at cheerleading as a conglomeration or a mix of many different types of sports. So you look at gymnastics,
Right.
you look at Olympic weightlifting, you look at powerlifting, okay, you look at dance. And we kind of start to combine some of that. Now, everybody's always talking about, well, it's a 2.5 minute routine, so why aren't you looking at like an 1,800 or an 800 meter runner or a 1,500 meter runner? Well, you can't really do that because those guys are doing one consistent activity over time. Cheerleading is you're constantly changing your activity. So we have to throw that out the window, and you'll probably notice, coming back to Anya's point, where do you get a lot of information? Brianne is constantly posting on YouTube talks that I do. So if you want to learn more about how to do program design, how do you want to do practice design, because I know we don't have an infinite amount of time to discuss these things. I do longer talks to kind of get into why you would set practice up the way you would set practice up, or why you would work out. But in a nutshell, cheerleading is, think of the most difficult parts of cheerleading are actually require a lot of explosiveness. So for an athlete to be able to jump and flip in the air and come back and land on their feet, that's a really explosive activity. And if you're constantly doing strength and conditioning activities with fatigue, the physiology that we've seen actually so there are different, let me just kind of back up a little bit. There are different types of muscle fibers in the body. There's slow twitch and there's fast twitch. Does that make sense? So the fast ones are like a sprinter. The slow twitch would be like a marathon runner.
Okay.
So within fast twitch, there's actually several different types there as well. So think of a 50-meter runner, an 800-meter runner, a high jumper. Like, there's all kinds of different explosiveness. So when it comes to training, if you train with more fatigue, or you train closer to your maximum capacity, meaning you're getting closer and closer to not being able to do like your push-ups or whatever it is, you're actually taking the really, really explosive muscle fiber types and turning them into less explosive fiber types. They're still fast twitch, but they're less explosive. So my idea is, well, knowing that if you train the really explosive fast twitch, you're still going to be strong. So you're still going to be able to have some type of powerlifting like strength, but you can't train like a powerlifter to have really explosive activity. So what I tend to do in the cheer district workouts is focus more on the explosiveness. trying not to have too much fatigue, because as I said, it switches the way your muscles are, and we don't want to do that. And a huge talk for me that I think people have a rough time getting over is you don't want to train to fatigue. And I just kind of discussed why, because the more often you do that, the less explosive you're going to make your athletes. And when they have to go do their basket toss, or when they have to do their standing full, or they have to do a really high dismount, they're not going to be as explosive as they could be. So from a performance standpoint, that's where the workouts are kind of shifted. And I'm trying to marry, I know everybody wants to feel like they're working out, and I wish I could just educate everybody and say that feeling like you've worked out means nothing. Because if you really thought like going to fatigue and exhausting yourself completely is really good for performance, I have way harder exercises than you could ever imagine to do. But the athletes would never be ready for your practices. So strength and conditioning is supposed to help you for your practice. It's not supposed to be a sport in itself. I think that's probably, I hope that answered your question.
For people that have similar questions too, we have a lot of this information and education put on our blog. Something that we try to do, that I try to do, is I basically extract this information from Scott's brain and I put it into layman's terms, and I try to put it into a blog so that like anybody can understand it and they can take that information and apply it to their practices or their personal training. So if you are interested, our blog, it's literally cheerdistrict.com/blog, but we have a bunch of different blog posts that kind of take all this information and break it down into bite-sized like blog posts so that you can kind of better understand and learn how to apply all of these different concepts that Scott has brought into the sport to better understand how to train your athletes, but in kind of little bite-sized pieces so that it's not as overwhelming with all the information at once. But that's definitely a great resource. If I'm seeing a couple people in the comments like, yes, preparing your body before skill, like love that. So all the information on kind of how to do that properly, how to mitigate fatigue, all that stuff is on the blog.
All right, nice. Thank you, Doctor, for answering all of those questions. Even if my audio wasn't coming in clear, the other follow up there is that is this, would you know, to your knowledge, is Cheer District is the only app or blog or website that's actually dedicated to this?
So there's definitely other cheerleading fitness platforms out there, people that promote fitness for cheerleading. That exists for sure. Yeah. There's a couple other apps that have fitness as parts of it. But in terms of science-backed fitness for the cheerleading industry, with the research that Scott does behind it, there really isn't much. The one other person that we know that we actually, work with, talk to a lot, is Debbie Love. She does do some of that she has similar theories behind her workouts and things like that. But she does that through her website, not through kind of a step-by-step programmed app. But in terms of the science-backed workouts, that's through an app that takes you through the workouts. We are, based on our knowledge, we are the only ones that do that.
Nice. And that's why I said I'm privileged to have both of you here, right? But before I ask my other question, because it's very interesting, I'd like to have a question from the floor. Anya,
Yes.
There is a question by Mark Prado.
Yes. So, hi, Scott and Brianne. For my question, I easily get muscle cramps nowadays every time I tumble. I'm at my 30s now. Has it something to do with my activities before, or is it just my age? Nice question, Mark.
I feel you.
Like when I stretch, I get cramps,
Your neck tweaks and you're like,
yeah. Exactly.
I get it. But Scott, you take this one. That's all you.
Okay. Obviously, with a couple sentences, it's kind of difficult to narrow down what the problem is, but I'll just throw out a few things that I think you should have looked into. So I think when you're looking at this, you should go see a healthcare practitioner. that is familiar with sports, just to kind of dive into this a little deeper. But when you're talking about cramps, it could be anything from electrolytes, which would be like your magnesium, your potassium. You could be low on some of those things. I assume you already eat healthy, but it's still not a bad idea to maybe just get the blood checked to make sure you're not deficient in any of those things. You also want to make sure you're not. Now, to me, this topic isn't as simple as it sounds, but you want to make sure you're hydrated. And the other thing could be, if you are somebody that's been tumbling for many, many years, you have to remember, even if you feel strong when you're younger, your body, you're probably still, if you weren't training properly, your body is likely still breaking down and develops scar tissue and little injuries over time. And as an athlete, you may not notice that. And in my industry, I see a lot of athletes as well, when they're done their sport and they come to me and they're like, oh, my shoulder's sore. It kind of cramps up a little bit. I didn't really do anything. I don't know why it hurts. It didn't just happen then. It happened a long time ago, and you're deconditioning because you're not training for your sport, or you're not doing your sport. So you're actually deconditioning over time. And now these little muscles that have been injured during your athletic career have to work harder, but they're still injured or have a lot of scar tissue. So I kind of gave you 3 little things there that you can look over. The other thing is just making sure you're doing the appropriate type of warm up before you do your activity. And I, like Brianne says, I get into that in the blog as well. But making sure that the muscles are warm and they're fully functioning. And I think beyond that, that should help you, because it'll increase blood flow and hopefully reduce the cramping. So I kind of touched on 3 or 4 areas. I don't know which one it would be. I would have to sit down with you and kind of hammer that out, or just make sure you see somebody that specializes in sports that's a healthcare practitioner.
Wow.
And I do want to make a point before I forget. Lee J, I apologize for the EOE.
That's all good.
That's
fine. I'm totally silenced.
No, I wanted to, again, going back, Dr. Scott, like I said, so there are age appropriate exercises, right? Meaning, because as an athlete of a high school, maybe a 12-year-old to a 20-year-old, there's a broad range, right? And the body, like you said, sort of changes, gets stronger, breaks down also. Where do you see, what if there's a peak? If there's a peak cheerleading age, what age would that be for a woman? Let's say for a girl, a flyer or whatever. And then for a guy, what age would that be?
Okay, so now you're asking. That's a tough question. Just because Brianne touched on this, I don't think cheerleaders have been training properly. So as we've gone through time, I think that's a tough thing to answer. So I'll just kind of pull it from other sports. So generally with females, they come into their performance a little bit earlier than a male. So you're looking at, if you're talking about purely gymnastics, like you are in general, don't just lump everything into here, but in general, like you're looking at early teens for females to excel. Now, having said that, and I hope I don't open up a can of worms here, but I follow a lot of doctors when it comes to doing physical fitness for females. And it looks like, because of the gender bias in the past, females get trained differently than males. And what we're starting to see, if you stop doing that, females tend to have the same results as males. So I think over time, you may see males and females kind of will mature, will be physically ready at the same time. And so you can continually get stronger and more powerful as you go through your teenage years and into your early 20s. And then obviously at some point, there's going to be a drop off. And I try to pride myself to not be vague in my answers, but I can't really give specifics on this one because I'm not convinced. I know for a fact that training for cheerleading hasn't been done properly.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, in more anaerobic sports, your peak is earlier. So cheerleading would be an anaerobic sport. In distance sports, athletes peak later. So early 20s for really explosive sports, and somewhere earlier. But for endurance athletes, you can continue to improve into your 30s.
There's hope for us.
Yes.
I don't know
I
if
think-
there's hope for me.
I think that's what Dr. Scott's trying to say.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
No, but I no, it's one of the best answers I've heard with this. I mean, if not the best, because it's correct. It's a good perspective.
If I can jump in just for a second, I think that it's really important to note that here, because I get this question all the time when we're talking to primarily like senior age teams, but also into like college cheer. Every single college cheer coach that I talk to, they go, well, do you have a program for our males? And so after talking to Scott, we always say, really, your males don't actually need a significantly different program. They're just going to, and Scott, jump in if I'm speaking out of turn, but they're just naturally maybe going to lift heavier because they're lifting the girls aren't lifting the guys, right? So Scott, again, jump in. It's a fraction of their own body weight, but when we think about how we're training, how we're training shouldn't be significantly different. It's just simply the males could lift heavier if they want to, but even then, like Scott said, we're trying not to train to fatigue. So males shouldn't be going and being like, oh, how much can I, deadlift, or look how much I can curl. It's not about that. It's about like explosive power. So really the way that we train for males and females really shouldn't be that different. Scott, I don't know if you want to just add on to that a little bit, but I know that's a question we get all the time.
I think, and I'm gonna go further, and I think as you guys listen to me more, there's obviously, when you're doing training, you can train to fatigue. You are gonna see some results, but it's gonna be like this. If you do proper training, you're gonna see results like this. So please don't get the idea that if you do training to fatigue that you're not gonna improve. I don't want to say that, but I think somebody has to come out and start saying, here's the most efficient way to train. So when I'm answering these questions, please take it with an understanding that there are all kinds of different ways to train. I'm just trying to show you what's the most efficient way to train. So to touch on Brianne's point, I'm still going to always argue the males and the females don't need to train differently. So because there's obviously all girl teams and there's co-ed teams, where the different lies. And if you go and take a look at the biomechanics of an all-girl team, and you look at the biomechanics of a co-ed team, where you start to notice the difference is the co-ed teams, they don't actually use their legs as much as an all-girl team does. So that's where the difference may come in the training. So all-girl teams get into deeper squats. And then co-ed teams they look more like an Olympic. Are you guys familiar with like a clean and jerk lift where you just kind of have the weight at your waist and you do a quick little pop?
Yeah, and then
or when somebody's tumbling, there's not a whole lot of knee bend. So that is what you'll see in a co-ed routine, and then in the all-girl teams, you see a lot more knee bend. So that's kind of where we come at the training a little bit. I wanted to make another point, but now I can't. It kind of slipped my mind. But
It'll come back eventually.
The actual methodology of the training doesn't need to be different. It just may be where you're focusing. What exercises should you focus on, depending on which sport you're doing, or whether it's co-ed or whether it's all girl.
Wow, it's so different.
But it makes so much sense. Like every time you guys answer a question, it's like, yeah, I mean, why weren't they able to think of that? It's so weird.
And a lot of coaches that are listening now, and a lot of coaches, there are some coaches that preach the holistic way of approaching training and all of those. But many, I would think 90% of our coaching community, they just keep doing the thing until the kids fall down exhausted and say, "Hey, we're done," and they're doing well because we train to exhaustion, and of course that increases the chances of injury. That creates a different sort of problems. But that's how I guess it's not scientific. Definitely not scientific. And again, it goes back to Anya's question, because teams here in the Philippines, not everybody can afford a nutritionist on staff, a physiologist, things like that. At most, they have a strength coach, which basically just means go to the gym and lift more weights. I mean,
Yeah.
that's all they do. It's not scientific at all, and it's refreshing to hear this from a doctor and and someone with experience like this. Good, because Lee J used to coach his own teams, right? And he ran them to the ground. I think.
Not
Just
really. We are
not really.
very
Almost, almost.
almost.
I'm just
You don't get it, get
teasing.
out. Just enjoy.
I've been there. I've been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I want to touch on is, like, I talk about fatigue and strength and conditioning, but I think another thing we all need to consider is, and this is like, there are thousands of research articles on this, fatigue also interferes with motor learning, meaning skill learning. So if you're actually creating fatigue at practice and then you want them to learn a skill, they may improve a little bit at that practice, but the brain at the next practice, the brain won't know the motor pattern. So you're basically almost starting over every practice when you start doing a lot of fatigue. And then the other thing comes, how I think a lot of, because I was guilty for this in the first 10 years of my coaching, how a lot of coaches will do training at the end of practice. So they'll do their little push-ups and sit-ups and whatever they're going to do at the end of practice, but you're already fatigued. So remember I said, to be able to move, to work the explosive motor types, muscle types, you have to be fresh. And so it's a waste of time to do that workout in practice. Now I realize everybody is in pandemic mode right now. So you're doing training either through some type of virtual system. So it's okay, but still remember that training is supposed to improve you for your sport. You're not supposed to be trying to recover from training to get ready for your practices. And the last little point I want to make is, I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of high tech testing equipment. And one of the things we
loves his tech.
What's that?
I said Scott loves his tech.
Yes. So I've been able to, I know because COVID has kind of slowed things down, I still have probably tested about 40 to 50 cheerleaders during this time, because I've been fortunate enough to be classified as an essential service. And what we're noticing on the force plate is, I know the cheerleaders, because Anya, you talked about cheerleaders have a certain look and they look like their legs are really muscular. That would be one of the looks. But when you look at the data from a force plate, they're actually not using those big quad muscles. They're using the muscles on the back of the legs, and they're using a hip hinge to do a lot of the explosive activity. And so some of the data we're seeing is, to me, it's very interesting, but it also increases their injury of risk. And I think it's because of the way we design our practices, that the athletes are learning skills, and they're not maybe not inappropriately, but they're learning skills that continually work on what I call drive. And when they continually work on drive, it takes away from the other movement types, and that's what will increase their injury risk. So keep an eye out for further videos that we do down the pipe to kind of explain how do we make the athlete a little bit more well-rounded in their strength and their power output, because it's pretty alarming what I'm seeing right now. I'm a little geeky, so I get excited when I see these things. Okay.
And yeah, speaking of being geeky, I mean, I was so excited to come into the conversation about the analytics part of this app. Honestly, in my day job, I think that's the only thing that I look at day in, day out. So, right now, I don't think we have access to it right now, but can you just walk us through what our users can expect when it comes to checking off the analytics, because I think that's also crucial for cheerleaders to be able to have that kind of numerical type of feedback, not just saying, yeah, that's good, or like, no, you can't do it yet. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just pulling it up on my phone so that I can kind of try to show you guys. But basically what we did is we wanted an objective way for coaches to look at their teams and say, like, okay, where is my team at from the perspective of the skills that are required in a certain level? And for so long, how many times have we had tryouts? We have however many kids, and then everybody leaves, and there's like piles of paper all over the gym, like trying to make your teams. You're like, okay, who had Sally Q? Does anybody remember the skills that she did? I feel like she had a really good standing tuck. I wrote that down on her page, but was she the one with the pink shirt? It's so much harder to make the teams. Like, the more athletes that you have, the more you're trying to, analyze that. And I'm very much like you, Anya. I'm strictly analytical, love the numbers. So this is a big part for me that I wanted to include in the app. So basically what we have is a coach's corner. So in that coach's corner, you can most importantly track your athletes' workouts. So there's like an accountability piece. So Anya, if you miss your workout 3 days in a row, I'm going to get notified as your coach so that I can follow up with practice and be like, excuse me, why didn't you do your workout? So, and you'll actually get this big red dot on your name so that I, as a coach, can easily scroll by and be like, okay, Anya and Lee didn't do their workouts. Why are they slacking? But the analytics, so it pulls together. The athlete can go in and check off the skills that they have in each level, except for those skills don't become official until their coach approves the skill. So if I say I have a back handspring, and Anya, you're my coach, you'll get a notification that says like, Brianne, has checked off her back handspring. And then you can either approve that skill or deny that skill, because you're like, yes, Brianne has done her back handspring without a spot for like 6 practices in a row. She's got that. Or you're like, Brianne, that handspring is still super janky. It's on the trampoline. This does not count. No, you don't have your back handspring yet. So after you do that, and like throughout the season, throughout the years, obviously all your athletes are going to have their skills kind of checked off and kept up with. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring, hopefully it'll, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys can kind of
so
see
there's
that.
like a marker. There's like
Yeah,
a
so
gauge
there's
of completion. Okay.
Yeah, I wish this was better. Maybe if my screen's darker. Oh, that didn't work. There's a reflection, but you guys get the point. So there's analytics for stunting, tumbling, and then overall. So what happens is I have all of these athletes on my team. So these are our cheer district training team athletes. We have 10 athletes that we follow, and we do, Scott does testing on them. We try for every 3 months, except for the pandemic has really thrown that off. So we haven't quite got all the data that we want to, but what we do is we've tracked their skills and checked them off, and I've set them at a level 4 team. So with the skills that they've checked off, and I've also assigned them like a stunting level. So are they a really strong stunter and they could do any level 4 skill? Are they, a medium level 4? They need someone in their group who's a strong level stunter, or are they a tumbler? They're not really in the stunts because they're not quite at level 4. And then I get as an aggregate score for where the team's at for their tumbling. So all the skills that have been checked off, where the team's at for their stunting. And then I get an overall score of the two. So this team is a level 4 and it's at 73%. So that means that 73% of the required skills in level 4 have been checked off for this team, and an average of how they're at with their stunting. So as a coach, I could look at that and be like, okay, like that's a pretty decent score for going into level 4. Like I can see each individual athlete, we've got some 85% of their level 4 skills, 100% of their level 4 skills. One girl has 46% of her level 4 skills. Maybe that's not quite ready for level 4. So I can move around the athletes from team to team to make the strongest analytics per team, but I can also just track my analytics for an individual team throughout the season. So as they add skills, where are their analytics at? And then I can be more confident when I go to competition and say, if my team's at 87% level 4, I'm confident they're going to be checking off the majorities on their score sheet, right? Because majority of the athletes on the team are going to have those skills, which is bumping up their overall percentage of basically maxing out level 4. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've just heard the most efficient way to like do skill checks for your team. Because honestly, like when you were talking about it, I get flashbacks of like our coaches asking us, giving us like skill check days, and you're like, how do I know if it's like I'm doing it right? But like when I was watching our boss Itas like go through the skill tracker, I was like, oh gosh, I think I have to go back to level 1 because I don't think I could even do like a bridge from standing right now without cramping my lower back. So yeah, I think that's a pretty cool way to track the skills, to be able to track your performance of the cheerleaders. That I wish that we really had this kind of technology back then because it sounds
Right.
so
Yeah.
exciting.
And what's great about those tools, like the coaches corner, so the education, the coaches tools, the analytic tracking, all that stuff, that's all free. You can download the app and you can use that right away. You can add your athletes. It's just
Great.
the training portion of the app that's a paid portion. But we actually work with the gyms to do basically then they become a reseller of the platform. So instead of all your individual athletes going and purchasing through the app store, we can work with an individual gym. They purchase from us at a discounted rate the number of programs that they need for their athletes, and then we just go in the back end and we unlock the programs for those athletes.
Yeah, but I think, given the pandemic right now, even with budget constraints, at least the features that are highly accessible in the app, I think that's something that our coaches could easily use already. And, and somewhere down the line, if money already permits, they can already start subscribing to your training programs, because I think that's really the way Dr. Scott explained. It's the really most efficient way to train. Like, I honestly wish I knew how to do that, because I wouldn't be staying up so late after training, trying to finish my homework due for the next day and waking up early again for school. So yeah, I mean, I'm so excited to explore the app later after the show. But for our listeners or viewers, if you have any more questions, of course, for Brianne or Dr. Scott, please send them through the comments so that we could ask them for you. And actually, we're going through some of the comments right now. We just have a lot of our viewers, just commenting, reacting to some of the things that you guys have said. And I think this is the most mind-blowing episode that we've had here in season 4.
No, I wanted to comment also on because we started the NCC in 2006, and then we started the national team program, which we support and we nurture also. And the most ideal would be the science behind it. We've always looked towards, because I've always been envious of these professional basketball collegiate teams that have a full complement of these doctors, scientists, and because the human body is capable of so much, right? So if you apply science to it, and in forming the national program for cheer, because we're moving towards it being an Olympic sport and getting to that level, we gotta also level up in terms of our own training methods and science. And I was just in the back of my mind, I said, you know what, if we had enough, if we're able to, why don't we just get Cheer District and Dr. Scott and Brianne to be the official consultants for Team Pilipinas, our national team, for the next 5-6 years, and see how far we can go, because you really need someone with the credibility and science, application of science for any program nowadays, because you cannot just throw an athlete on the mats and say tumble X amount of times. I mean, it's a different level already, and I think you're on the right path. And I think this will be the basis for future cheerleaders, and as the sport progresses. And I think you're at the forefront with this, you guys. That's why I'm so privileged that you're guesting on this show because we're learning so much. It's common sense. You're like, oh, all right, yeah, it should be that way. So we want to ask a question, Anya, from Algen.
Yes. Okay. So, for Dr. Scott and Brianne, so National Cheerleading Championship is the biggest cheerleading competition here in the Philippines. And we have to go through first for regional qualifiers before we can enter the final round. And obviously, we are much prepared for qualifiers rather than for finals because usually teams here, after we qualify in regionals, we only have almost 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes even 1 week before the finals, and we're making a whole different routine, skill set, etc. So I think the question is here is is there an efficient way to be able to prepare in that short amount of time? And is it our fault for setting it that, like, boss, can you come back out here? Because it's
Because
the time gap.
yeah, we organize the national, so we organize the whole competition as you saw in the first video. So what he's saying is there's a limited amount of time before the finals from the qualifiers. So I don't know. Of course, I can answer that, but of course, you guys, Dr. Scott and Brianne, you want to comment on that question?
So I think this is probably the biggest thing in cheerleading is that I see, like, I think every country has the same issue where they revamp their whole, they really think they need to revamp their whole routine right after they do their regionals or their provincials or whatever it's going to be. And I did do some judging for a little while, and I think just remember this isn't so much from the science standpoint. It's almost impossible to revamp and increase your skills over just a couple of weeks, and you're increasing your risk of not hitting the routine. So I think prior to regionals, at some point you have to set aside time to work on some of these skills that you think you might want to put into the routine. I think that's going to be one way I'm going to answer it. The other way I'm going to answer it, and this is more personal, every judge likes to see a perfect routine. So I'd rather see you hit the routine than try to do a harder skill, because if you do the harder skill and miss, I'm still human as a judge, and whether I think it or not, subconsciously you're not going to get as good of a score. I know we do our best to try and be objective, but there is a lot of subjectivity in cheerleading. So I think you have to do your best to prepare before regionals. If you're going to add something in after regionals, I wouldn't do it in that little window. I wouldn't try to teach a new skill in that little window, because you're going to lessen the confidence of your athletes, which means they're going to perceive, so this is coming back to science, they're going to perceive that the routine is more difficult because it's new. And when they perceive that it's more difficult, the brain will actually not allow you to turn on as many muscle fibers because they're perceiving it as harder. So be aware of that side of things. So make sure they need to be more prepared, I think, prior to that little change. I think that's my best takeaway. There's an art and there's a science, and you need to learn how to marry the two together. In cheerleading, we do almost all art and no science.
I think something worth noting as well is that if you can take the scientific approach, I love that comment. If you can take the scientific approach earlier on, and you can do practices without generating too much fatigue, so that you can groove more appropriate motor patterns earlier on, you might actually be able to start to do those skills that you want to do for your final championship earlier on in the season, because you'll be preparing earlier for faster skill acquisition, because you're not generating fatigue. You're going to be training properly so that when you come to practice, it's easier to get the skills. Like, all of those things where you might see yourself as you're at finals might come earlier. And then instead of spending the time between regionals and finals trying to create this whole new routine, you can spend the time looking at your score sheet from regionals and saying, okay, we're at the difficulty that we want to be at. We've grooved the appropriate motor patterns so that when we get on the floor, it's like, your body just goes into, like, it just knows what it's doing. You're not super fatigued, but then you can add all those little things that do wow the judges, that do take that routine from, okay, this is a good hit routine, from a judge sitting back and being like, they performed that routine. Like, they hit that routine, and could not have hit it harder. And I think, in my opinion, that's kind of the art side, is like, how can we take it from, okay, we've created basically we've built our athletes' bodies and their motor patterns, and their muscle fibers are firing properly, and now we're taking them and building their confidence. So we're doing that art and the mental side of it, just like Scott said. If they perceive it as harder, then their brain is actually going to make their bodies react differently. So if we can make it so that they're super confident and now they're just ready to like work that routine, then that's probably a more effective use of that 1 week between. Try to build it properly so you can get those more difficult skills earlier, and then just spend that week cleaning your routine.
And I think Brianne, just to touch on it, as a coach, because I did coach for 20 years, let's all be honest. We push the kids and we put these skills in, and then we take them out anyway. Right? As we get closer and closer, we're worried about not hitting the routine, so we take it out anyway. So why waste your time? I would just, like, after 20 years, I can't think of a time where I've added in the skill and then I've left it as is. I've always had to modify it, like 2 practices before we have the competition. So instead, just let it ramp up, and try not to be so, I guess, stressed out about that you need to do this specific thing. I think that's gonna, because we all pull it out at the end anyway. So or the routine doesn't hit usually. You may have the one-off where you're lucky and all the stars align and you hit the routine, but I don't think that's a good way to prepare yourself.
Yeah, I think you don't want to bet all of your money on that, right?
Yes.
If there are, I mean, because right now, I think one of the advocacies of NCC is to be able to, I guess, develop that appreciation for the sport for the people outside of the community. And, I'm thinking maybe if they can experience how we train, just for fitness sake, they'd appreciate the sport better. Is there a way, or are there any plans to be able, for Cheer District app to be used by, anybody who's just into fitness and who wants to train like a cheerleader, even if that person really isn't a cheerleader?
I mean, really anybody could sign up and download and use the app. I know I have some people in my life who, just as a means to support me, they're not cheerleaders, but they go and they use our alumni program. Well, sorry, my fiance's here.
Hello.
Work from home, we're in close quarters, so he's starting his day now. But really anybody can use it. We have other athletes use it, like we have gymnasts, we have some figure skaters. I know some people that come to Scott's clinic, he'll recommend using it if he thinks that it's a good program for them. But in terms of the general population, like if you're watching this feed and you're like, hey, I'd love to train like a cheerleader, sure, you can go and download the app and get a subscription. There's nothing stopping you, that's for sure. You might have to learn how to do like a herky or a toe touch. So that could be fun if you have your family at home watching you. But
oh, sorry, that was my dog. Yeah, but I'm sorry. Again, working from home, so close quarters. But yeah, I think that's something that I would love to share with my friends, like even with my husband, maybe. Like if we would work out, so he'd appreciate how hard I used to work with all of these conditioning. Yeah, I think that's something that we could do. I'm checking the comments now. Well, we don't have new questions yet, but Coach Lee J, do you have other questions for either Brianne or Dr. Scott?
Well, I think basically this Cheer District app that you guys have developed would really be a good platform, not only for cheerleaders but for cheer enthusiasts and even other athletes that would like to get a hold of some of our training programs. But Do you think that is there really a commonality or a common denominator here that across all sports would benefit? Yeah,
Yeah,
anyone could answer.
yeah, because I think really when you take a look at it, most most sports with strength and conditioning. Now there's obviously some nuances built in for cheerleading, but for most sports, these packages would work fine because they're not producing a whole lot of fatigue, and we're just working on creating explosivity. We're working on increasing power, and we all know that just about every sport requires power. So
Okay,
it definitely can carry on to other sports because you have to remember I'm bringing this from other sports, and
that's right. That's
over
right.
time it'll probably become even more specific to cheerleading as I start to collect more force plate data. And that's one of the things Brianna and I are working on now is trying to figure out how to get a force plate to every gym. So not just a national program, but every gym where it just gets sent to them. We are at the other end running the testing while they're doing their training on the force plate, and then that data gets sent to us, and the force plate then gets sent on to the next gym or something along that lines. So as we collect more and more data like that, the programs will become a little bit more geared towards the demands of cheerleading.
That's
But
right.
in general, it's always still going to revolve around three things: not a lot of fatigue, work on your power, and make sure you're strong through the full range of motion that's required for your sport.
Yeah.
Wow.
And in the like 3 or so years, since you guys have developed this app, how far has it gone? Like from when you first initially planned the app in terms of the programs that you guys want to put in, how was the journey towards the development of that, and like what are your, if you can share, what are the plans in terms of improving the programs, because I think our bodies also like update and like improve as we go along, like we even the kids nowadays, we'll never know what type of skill that they'll be able to learn, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been you might have noticed while you were asking that question, both Scott and I were laughing because
Yeah, so I think there's something
yeah,
there.
yeah, no, it's definitely been quite the journey. Actually started with like a web platform to do a proof of concept so that we could make sure that, as we know, this was new to the cheerleading industry, especially 3 years ago. There wasn't really anything like this. So, I mean, we're still pretty much the only ones that do this, but it was even newer back then. So we wanted to make sure that the industry wanted what we were giving them before we went and developed the app, because that is quite the process. We've made sure to develop our app. It's a completely custom app so that we have the ability to adapt with the sport. We have the ability to adapt with the athletes. What's cool about what Scott does is he's constantly researching the sport. Like he said, he's got the force plates to collect more data. He loves, and he might minimize this, but he loves his little tech gear. If he's every time I feel like I talk to him, he's like, Brianne, I found this new technology and it's really cool. We should get it. We should use it. So he's got a couple of these little different pieces of technology that help gather data so that we can continue to improve the programs, which we definitely, I mean, he's works on them all the time and continuously grows them, improves them. But from the technology perspective, we've made sure that everything that we do and that we build is able to be built on, because even as things as simple as where the leveling was and the divisions 3 years ago are completely different than divisions now. So we have to be able to adapt our programs so that when an athlete signs on, they might be new to cheerleading and they're saying, okay, well, I'm a junior too. And 3 years ago, the skills for junior two were different than the skills for that junior two is
Exactly.
now. So we've made sure that we consistently work very closely with our developers to make sure that we are staying up to date with those kinds of things so that we can make sure that the athletes that are using the platform are getting the appropriate information. They're getting the appropriate workouts that Scott is continuously working on. And hopefully over the next couple of years, as we collect more data, do more research on the sport, like Scott said, those programs are going to become even more and more specific to the sport and more specific to the evolution of our sport. Because as we know, like when we were younger and we were cheering, I remember being on a level 3 team, and it's like if 4 people on the team could do a back handspring, it was a massive win.
Exactly.
See that, right? Like it's so different now. The skills that we're doing are different. Some of the skills I see people do now, I'm like, how did you even come up with that pass? I couldn't have even imagined that pass. So to make sure that we're collecting the data on how that's affecting the body, like Scott said, how are our quads developing versus our hamstrings and our glutes, and using a hinge versus actually going deep into a squat. The body is evolving to the skills that we're doing and how we're training the body. So then we need to either take into account those changes to revert them and help them get back to what is actually appropriate for the body, but also take into consideration what we would be doing at practice so that, and maybe Scott can talk about this, I don't know if this is a topic you guys are interested in, but take into consideration so that we're not overtraining certain things, because overtraining is also a problem. So Scott, I don't know if you guys want to jump into that a little bit, but I think tangent there, but you know what I mean.
I think what I want to add to just come back a little bit, it's been astronomically expensive and stressful, and it's not for the faint of heart to go from where we started to where we are now. So if people are interested in doing things along this line, like I know you talked about this, Anya, it's a way bigger beast than we ever thought it was going to be. I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't think we would change anything. But we had no idea what this was going to be like when we started out, and we're kind of in it now, and we just have to keep going.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I've been in the whole like app web development industry, and I know how tough things can get. So yeah, but at least you guys have already launched it, and well, I just hope that the cheerleaders here in the Philippines download the app and explore it for themselves, and convince their coaching staff to subscribe to your program, because I think it's really something that they'll all benefit from.
Yeah, we hope so too. Thank you. Yeah, if anybody, also, I just want to throw this out there, if anybody has any questions and they want to talk to us like directly, please feel free to email us. My email is Brianne@cheerdistrict.com. Scott's is Scott@cheerdistrict.com. We try to do our best to help individuals too. Like it's our passion to be in this industry. It's our passion to help the next generation of cheerleaders. I mean, it's to be able to connect personally with people and answer their questions and help them train better. That's really why we're here. That's why we're doing this. So don't feel like you only have the resource of the app, although obviously it's a great resource. And if you're coming to us for a training program, we're going to direct you to the app. But if you're coming in, we've had some athletes or coaches come to us and say, like, I have this one athlete who struggles with this one skill. Do you mind looking at a video of the skill and recommending some specific exercises that might help them because of their form, or they just haven't been able to break through that skill? Scott's done Zoom calls with those athletes to try to help them work through that kind of stuff. So we're here as a resource, and more than just the app store downloading the app. We are here as like people to connect with. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us personally.
Yeah, I think a lot of the coaches who are watching would definitely, reach out to be able to, do something for their teams, because honestly, I think that's the top priority of their coaches, to be able to bring out the full potential of their kids, right?
Absolutely.
Right. I wanted to say, moving to the Philippines is expensive. Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? No?
Oh, there you are. Now you're back.
There you go.
Okay, I'm back.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? No. I would say to Dr. and Brianne, moving to the Philippines is pretty inexpensive, okay? Just putting it out there.
That's quite the
In
move.
case
That's quite the move.
for consideration. Just in case, putting it there, warm climate,
It's not as cold there this year.
problems with the yeah, not as cold. You'll probably, even if we go, probably be around in short stuff. So guys, connection a little spotty. There we go.
Yeah, I think a little bit. Like it's getting cut.
It comes in and out.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to decipher everything, but no.
No, not
You're
yet.
also getting a little bit pixelated.
Are you there, boss? Boss, are you there?
Yeah. The internet gets pretty crazy here. I think everybody is working from home, so I don't know. I think we're
That's
just all sharing our bandwidth here at home for the residential areas here in the Philippines. But yeah, Coach Lee J, yeah, he'll come back. Coach Lee J, do you have any more questions while I check our comments?
Well, yeah, I'm also reading some of the comments, but I think just want to just make the comment of one of our coaches, Coach Ramon Pagaduan, that he said that, of course, the very essential when it comes to cheer training is, of course, the basics. We cannot get rid of basics, right? So, of course, our core, which is the core, is most of the part that where cheerleaders are really usually working out, right? So, core specific, is there any training for the cheer district app that would usually uh, talk about or have a workout for the core?
So that's a really valid point, and it's definitely one of the areas that we touch a lot on. I may come at it a little bit different than what most people think of the core, because the core is basically from the mid chest to the mid thigh, 360 degrees, right? It's basically almost your entire body is your core. So
Yes.
and then we use it a lot in an upright position.
Mm-hmm.
So I do put in, yes, there are planks, there are side planks, and we do kind of go through progressions of that. But I think what we all have to remember that anything you're doing that is upright is working the core. So if you're doing a lunge and you have a weight in one hand, right, or something like that, and you're doing a walking lunge with a weight in one hand, that is going to be a core workout where we don't really think about that as being core. So yes, it is one of my primary purposes of doing the program. It just may not always look like the traditional core workout. So core is going to be big, as well as developing the lower body. The upper body is also being developed, but if you really think about it, a lot of times when we're doing explosive activity with the core, where are your arms and how much are you bending them? So doing a big overhead press all the time doesn't necessarily make sense. So there's a lot of stuff where the arms are locked and you're doing a push there, because no matter if it's co-ed or varsity or if you're tumbling, that's a big portion of where you need the explosiveness. So yes, in a short answer, yes, the core is a big part of the cheer district workouts.
Yeah, I think a lot of the like conditioning exercises or strengthening exercises that we've been doing, I think this app and training program would be able to like debunk or something. Like are there certain like myths in terms of movement that we think, let's say we think that doing this would help improve something or your back handspring, but in reality it really doesn't? Like, have you encountered those types of like workouts that or conditioning exercises?
Yeah, I think one of the big myths is not necessarily the exercises. It's more how people are applying the exercises. So they think you need to feel it, in the sense you need to feel the burn, you need to be exhausting the athlete. So I'm always going to kind of come back to that. That's the biggest myth. Stop doing it is going to be my advice. Stop training like that, because the closer you get to failure, the more it interferes with your technique, and it also stops training the muscle fibers that you need. The other thing is also going to be a lot of I guess a lot of athletes over time they think if they do biking or running, that's going to be enough for their legs. You need to do leg workouts. I know everybody, it's tough, but you need to do it. So, and you need to make sure you're picking the appropriate range of motion that is in your sport. So as far as myths go, I think really the myths that I hear the most are that, well, strength and conditioning might stunt my child's growth. Strength and conditioning might make me too big and bulky and not flexible. All of these things are just as they are. They're myths. It takes a lot of effort to put on a lot of muscle, and those athletes we always tend to look at bodybuilders. Those bodybuilders are not natural athletes. They're doing other things to put on that much muscle. It's not that easy to put on muscle. And if you're always working on your flexibility, you're going to maintain your flexibility. You're going to maintain your flexibility anyway. And as far as stunting growth, a lot of that stuff just came from child labor camps, where a lot of the kids their growth was stunted. And they used to think it was from the heavy labor they were doing, but it actually was from malnutrition.
Okay.
I know it doesn't really answer your question, but
yeah.
Weight training helps you prepare for the sport. It allows your body to handle, because the forces in cheerleading are a lot higher than the forces in a weight training gym. Right? We try to match it as best we can. And in cheerleading, at some points, it's more unpredictable. So weight training is really safe for athletes, and you just got to watch. You got to get out of your head that you have to have all this fatigue, and you need to feel it. You just need to be trying as hard as you can on every repetition that you do. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely. I think that something, Scott, you could definitely expand on is kind of around the whole running thing. So a lot of us will come from gyms where maybe a coach says, go run a 5K or go run 2K, or you dropped a stunt, do 10 laps, or anything, really any kind of distance running, and how people don't like to hear Scott say it, but Scott says that's literally pointless. Do not do that. You're fatiguing your athletes and really not setting them up for success. So maybe, Scott, you can dive into a little bit more of like, why should someone not send their athletes out for even 2K run to start practice?
Well, I think if we come back to appropriate practice design, we have to remember that cheerleading is primarily anaerobic. And so doing the aerobic activity, not really necessary. But one of the things I've been doing is having discussions with some of the top exercise physiologists in the world about, when you look at cheerleading, think about jumps, think about tumbling, and how explosive those activities are, and how much force that puts through your Achilles tendon and your calf muscles. You need time to recover from that. So when you start adding in things like running and jogging, think of how many reps that occur during that 2K run or that 5K run that is going through your Achilles and your calf muscles. So you're actually leading to possibly increasing their injury risk, because you're not allowing for appropriate recovery, and the jogging actually isn't required for the sport. I know people are trying to work their aerobic system, but cheerleading, you do it once, 2.5 minute routine with a variety of different activities. Yes, I know you're breathing heavy by the end, but it's not like you're going to run it again in a couple hours in general. It's not like back in my day where we ran the routine 4 times in one day. Now it's
Oh
2.5
gosh.
minute routine. So
And that's it
be
for the day.
aware, yeah, be aware that the jogging can cause too much tension on the Achilles and on the calves. And I know people don't want to hear it, but I'm trying to mitigate your injury risk and minimize the stress on certain joints of the body that are used extensively in cheerleading. So if you're doing strength and conditioning and you're doing cheerleading practice, adding in jogging on top of that is going to be a recipe for disaster.
I think, you pretty much explained why my legs, my knees, my calves are like this today. Thank you for shedding light, and thank you for bringing that up, Brianne. We actually have one last question before we move on to our last segment for this talk. So from Evan, who's actually our co-host, who couldn't make it this evening because of work. Evan is asking, aside from strengthening exercises, does the app include flexibility training and cool down stretches too?
So it does. We have a stretching program that's actually free on our YouTube channel, but you can watch it through the app as well. So if you're looking for a stretching program, there's a seven episode series for stretching, but that also includes it's stretching and mobility. So it's not just about getting a heel stretch or a bow or something like that. And something that Scott also talks a lot about in these episodes. At the end, he kind of comes in and does some blurbs, but it's about not just like reefing on the leg and trying to work that flexibility, because obviously that's going to increase your risk of injury. So it's working on flexibility and strength together, as well as mobility, to make sure that you're working your flexibility properly. Also, just like a tidbit of information for those of you that are like for tops or flyers, when you're stretching, try not to do your stretching within 20 minutes of practice, because stretching actually decreases your power output. Scott, if I'm saying that wrong, feel free to jump in. So we try to make sure that we keep the static stretching away from practice. And then we also have a warm-up, a standardized warm-up that's available on the blog that you as coaches could take and apply it to your own practices and create that standardized warm-up. So you're doing the same warm-up, but Dr. Scott created that as well, so that we can make sure that we're looking at actually just taking that word literally and warming up the body, not creating fatigue within the warm-up, which is what we often see, is that you're creating fatigue before you even start practice, and that's not setting you up for success. So we do have both of those elements. However, they do not come necessarily within the training program. They're kind of outside, and those are free resources that anybody can have access to.
Great. Thank you for that, Brianne. Evan, I hope you got that. Anyway, we can for the people who are viewing, or at least for the people who would chance upon this stream later on, you can just replay back and forth with all of the answers if there's something you missed. But yeah, so that's it, I think, for our lengthy conversation. We're hoping that a lot of our cheerleaders and coaches would get in touch with you guys, or at least download the app, because honestly, I think this is the future of our sport.
Correct.
Because of
Very
how
useful, very
of
useful.
how you guys developed it, and with just putting the best interest of cheerleaders into this app. So thank you so much, Dr. Scott and Brianne, for putting this together for the cheerleading community. But before we let you guys go, we have our last segment. This is just a fun bit, so don't take it too seriously. we just call it this or that. So we just give you guys 2 options. Just choose one. It's up to you if you want to explain. Oh, there.
Boss is back.
Hi.
Welcome back. Just in time.
Welcome back. There. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
still
So for this or that, you just pick one. It's up to you if you want to explain yourself or not. So yeah. All right. So I will start, and I think this one, I don't know if it's a no-brainer or not. But anyway, I'll go ahead and ask. Poutine or French fries?
For me, French fries.
Poutine for
Really?
sure. If you're gonna do it, for sure.
Oh.
Wow, interesting. French fries for you, Brianne, huh?
Yeah, I like to put vinegar on my fries. I know that's like a Canadian thing, I think. Every time I go to the US and ask for vinegar, they're like, what? And I'm like, I don't know. I like vinegar on my fries.
I'll try that next time when I get fries here. Okay. Summer or winter?
Sorry, say that again. I missed that.
Summer or winter?
Summer, 100%. And we live in Canada, so we really get the cold, so I like summer.
Winter for me.
Really?
Yeah.
I heard that it's just so cold.
Yeah. I grew up in the snow belt, so I enjoy when winter comes around.
Oh, wow. I honestly think I miss the winter season also when we go to the States. Okay, and this one. So this is 3 choices. So, yeah. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Coach DJ. I have 4.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll leave the 3 options for last. Celine Dion or Avril Lavigne?
That's a good one. I'm gonna have to go with Celine Dion.
For sure, Celine Dion. Yeah.
Yeah,
classic.
I do love Avril Lavigne. She was like a big part of my childhood, but I feel like Celine Dion is classic.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with that.
Exactly. And then the last one for me before I turn you guys over to Coach Lee J. Raptors, Maple Leafs, or Blue Jays?
The Jays.
Probably the Maple Leafs.
Really?
Just because I've actually worked with them for a couple of years.
Oh, really? Okay.
All
right. Oh, okay. It's a sport thing. All
it's a sport thing for me. It's a sport thing for me. If I'm gonna sit down or if I would go, probably watching on TV, I'd rather watch basketball. But if I'm sitting down and going to a game, I'd rather go to a Jays game.
All right. Oh, Coach Lee J, before one last thing. Coach Evan actually sent one. Justin Bieber or Drake?
I'm gonna have to go with Justin Bieber.
I don't.
Can you say neither?
Probably Justin Bieber, I guess. If we're looking at music.
There. That's me. That's the last of me. Coach Lee J, take it away.
Yep. I do have a couple of questions for you, Doc Scott and Brianne. So, first question is, looks or skills?
Looks or skills?
Yeah.
Skills. 100%. No contest.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the choreography of the routine or the skills. I think the skills.
All right, the skills. Okay. Next is beer or whiskey?
Whiskey.
Whiskey.
So I don't drink.
Oh, okay.
But growing up, I was a bat boy for baseball, and one of the things they used to do was take a swig of whiskey. Every athlete would take a swig of whiskey because it gave them good luck, and we would always win the tournament. This is an adult team, so I would have to say whiskey, but I don't drink.
Okay.
He would say milkshake. Chocolate milkshake.
But that's a fun fact. That's a fun fact.
That's a fun fact.
He loves
So
like
Doc
a big
doesn't
milkshake.
drink, and then milkshake for Brianne. Okay.
No.
Big milkshake.
For Scott.
Oh, for Scott. Okay, for Scott. All right. Okay. I guess I would have my last this or that, and then probably Boss Ethos would be having a catch-up question. So my last question is, lights on, lights off.
For me, it's going to be lights on because I need to see all the data.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
Good
That's
one,
right.
Scott. Yeah.
You need all the
Yeah.
analytics, Doc.
Yes.
That is
Same
good.
answer. Same
Same
answer.
answer. Same
Yeah.
Okay, that will be it for me. How about you, boss?
All right, I have the usual question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Um, if you had one night dinner date with anybody in the world, living or not, uh, fictional or real, right? Who would it be and why? Any historical figure, any fictional character, anybody, one night dinner at your favorite restaurant, who would it be?
Our Miss Universe question for all our
Hmm.
guests.
Scott, you go first.
Okay, so I'm not. It's going to be a group. It's going to be all the Marvel and DC characters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, comic
Not just
fans.
one.
Both of them, both sides, right?
Yeah, because I want to see them get angry with each other too at the same time.
It's gonna be a huge party.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, Brianne.
I would have to say the original cast of Grey's Anatomy.
Oh,
Mm.
nice.
Mhm.
Wow.
If we're allowed to do like the group thing, because I feel like Scott did it first, so now I can do it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
the original cast of or at least like the core original cast of Grey's Anatomy.
Right. Interesting. That's nice. Yeah. Well, what's the name of the actor there? Patrick. Was it named Patrick something?
Patrick Dempsey.
Patrick Dempsey. Right.
Yeah, McSteamy, McDreamy, I'll have them both.
Right. McSteamy and McDreamy. That's right. Well, good. So that sort of concludes the show. It's almost 10 o'clock here. First of all, I'd like to give you the floor to say your last words to all our guests and the community. So, which of you can go first?
Sure. Well, thank you, first of all, for having us. It's been an honor to be here and chat with you guys and get to, it's so cool how we can use technology to connect from literally across the world. We're 13 hours different, so working that out, it worked for us. Thank you for having us. Really, I just want to say that we're super passionate about what we do. We do this because we love cheerleading. We do this because we want to help the next generation of cheerleaders. We do this because we get to be a part of the cheerleading industry. We've had the privilege of making it a career and getting to, I get to go to cheerleading competitions for my job. That's pretty awesome. I could tell my 6-year-old self that one day I would be, working full time in the cheerleading industry. I would have been like on top of the world. So, we'd love for you guys to be a part of our programs, to use our programs. We want to help you. Reach out to us. We want to talk to you, get to know you, and kind of become a part of your community as you can become a part of ours. And if you have any feedback or you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to get to know you and help you on your journey to building stronger and healthier athletes.
Yeah, and I think I just really appreciate being able to have this platform, to have this discussion. I hope we don't try to come across as knowing everything. I always believe I try to never be the smartest person in the room. I think I want to hear other people's opinions. I think we need to really push the sport of cheerleading forward. And I appreciate being able to have this platform. It was really nice to meet you guys. I hope soon we can meet in person.
For sure.
Right. So, well, let me go first. Thank you for guesting. Again, we're privileged to have you here and privileged to be able to bring your expertise and knowledge and your Cheer District app to our greater community of cheerleaders here. Hope we can grow it together. And I would encourage to sign up, everybody here to sign up, and we'll continue to promote Cheer District. It's a wonderful app. It's a great tool, and it's great for building the community. And you rest assured, anything you wanna just send us a message. Anything you want to promote, anything you want to news on anything on Cheer District and what you guys are up to, we'd be happy to have it and mention it on the show and even on our social media accounts. So again, thank you very much, Dr. Scott, Christie, and Brianne. Leej?
Yeah. Again, on behalf of the NCC, the National Cheerleading Community here in the Philippines, of course, Doc Scott and Brianne, thank you very much for sacrificing a bit of your sleep time to join us here. So this is really a privilege for us to really meet you virtually, and hopefully, if in time it will be permitted, then we'll all be having our time together and exchanging a lot of things as usual. Anya.
All right. So I think that wraps up our pep talk for season 4, episode 5, of course, with Cheer District app co-founders Dr. Scott and Brianne. So thank you again so much. I think we haven't thanked you enough with all of the information that you've shared with us tonight. Honestly, I'm like geeking out, like the way I think with how geeky Doc Scott is. I think, yeah, I can relate to that. But you know, for the, of course, to the cheerleading community, of course, don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more updates on our succeeding episodes. And of course, if you want to follow Cheer District, they're on YouTube, they're also on social media, and of course, download the app. The skill check and all of those other features are free for you guys to use. But if you want to subscribe to their programs, you can just send them a message, you know, for something that's for a bigger group, you know, if you're looking into that. But for now, it's time for us to go. It's time to for them to enjoy their day and for us to retire. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode. Good night, everybody, and good morning from Canada. Bye.
Bye.
After we introduced the Cheer District training app into our program, and we've seen some of our athletes grow leaps and bounds when using it consistently. One thing that I really appreciate is the fact that it focuses on the injury prevention side of building strength in our athletes.
I use Cheer District as a coach to communicate with parents ways that athletes are able to continue to build skills outside of cheer practice. Knowing that Dr. Scott has put together such a strong program that focuses specifically on conditioning and building strength for cheerleaders, I'm so confident saying to parents and suggesting the girls to go home and work on this app so that when they come back to practice or tumbling, that they're going to be stronger.
The differences I've seen in athletes have been incredible. For example, I have one athlete who I've been working level 3 skills, and we've been touching on lots of technique before quarantine, and then of course COVID hit, and I recommended to her mom to mainly focus on Cheer District while she wasn't in the gym. And the day she returned, it was pretty incredible. She actually came and we did all her level 3 skills. She was landing all her techs confidently, and we just grew from there. It was pretty amazing.